All right, y'all. We want to take this moment and welcome you to episode 5 of the Dismount Podcast. And today we are discussing the topic, being different. Are you actually unique or just trying to be a rebel? Now, today's topic is really just focusing on our opinions, as always, of the topic that we are discussing and talking about. Now, in no way, shape, or form are we telling you this is how you should think, this is how you should live your life, or this is how you should proceed in your endeavors. As always, we say, don't trust us, trust yourself, use your own discernment, and build that awareness alone. So, to kick it all off, I'd like to ask the question, what does it truly mean to be unique, in your opinion, young Darius?
Just the way we are supposed to be. I think we're all put here. There's no recipe for a human being. So on the very basis of it, we are all unique for sure. And I think that is something that's just something that is a kind of a birth given right. Like we are all, there's no two Zachs for sure. There's no two Brandons. There's no two anybody. So
Yeah.
there's no two people. Now, when you start to develop and you start to become an individual, that's when you start to let, the culture or people or peers bleed into who you are. And that's when it starts to become a little murky. So I think spiritually and as far as, who we are in the universe, we're definitely all unique. And what it means to be unique is, I think, just to be absolutely true to yourself. I think that's the 100% basic. Like there's that little voice in your head everyone has, and sometimes you definitely choose to ignore, but there is like the you told me about this, Brandon. I'd love Brandon to go into this. Correct. So there's like the you, and then there's the you, and then there's the you, and then there's like the third you is the one that's like trying to like that's the one you should probably be listening to. Like that's the one that like it's, I guess, would be like what your heart is telling you and who you truly are, what your soul is to the universe. Like that's kind of what I see that as.
Yeah.
And I think that, well, that doesn't make you unique, I would say. It does, I think it does actually strive to like, okay, well, maybe me and Zach might have similar, things we like to do, or, Zach and I thought of the same funny joke or something. Like, I don't think that makes you unique or not, but I think what it is being true to who you are and not letting, the pressure of outside forces coast you into doing things, or coax you into doing different things that you may not be into or find to be suitable for yourself.
Yeah, I had living by your own standards is
Yeah.
what uniqueness to me kind of at a basis is.
Right.
Not being pulled into other things that don't feel like they're aligned with you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's truly it. And I think like if you think of like your formative years in like high school, like that's like I was the worst about getting pulled into.
Oh, I feel you.
Always like Brandon would get me to do anything. No, he wouldn't. Brandon was a good one, but like you would definitely get yourself into things that like, yeah, again, like you're supposed to go out there and find yourself. That's the point. Like I don't think anyone could say like that third you is developed from day one. But there is an understanding of like, you as you start to develop, you get a good idea of who you are as an individual. You're not still out there. There's soul searching throughout your whole life, and there's things that I think most people go through. But through those formative years, like you do have to go out there and discover who you actually are too. So it's not just like given, like I mentioned, yes, we are given the ability to be unique. That's like everyone in the universe, as far as just a smattering of a bunch of heritage and families and just coming together in one generation equals you. But I think that third you that I keep mentioning is like that's something that's given you in your formative years, and eventually you continue to develop and develop and develop, and then eventually you get to the point where hopefully we are starting to figure out like, okay, like I have a pretty good basis of who I am and what I believe in and what my morals are and what my goals are in life, and you could still go against that for sure. But I think obviously that third you is more present than ever as you continue to develop and mature, and kind of hard to continue to lie to yourself if that voice is always. And I think that voice is your true self and what's truly going to make you unique, as opposed to who's going to be impressed on what you do, or you're worried about what the people outside of your small pocket think. I think that one is your truth, and that's what's going to, or what does make you unique.
I think it's fascinating to think about it as like those formative years we're almost like a computer, and we're just trying to pump ourselves full of all this different information and like knowledge and see what makes us feel good versus what makes us feel like, I don't really align with that, or that makes me feel kind of weird inside, or I go home and I feel shame from something that I might have done or might have seen or whatnot. So I like that whole way that you phrased that. And that would lead me into asking you, Tit, what would be your concept behind uniqueness?
I think my mind, first thing is, I think the words that Titty's looking for is, I'll mess it up because it's not personal, your public life, there's secret lives, but not everyone we know is in our secret lives. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Just somebody like Pam at the bar. Pam's not going to know our secret lives, but the closer we get to our secret lives, the more honest we get with ourselves. And I think a huge part of being unique, like a good unique, in my biased opinion, is just being honest with your true self and your self-interests and having more self-respect for yourself. So in that way you're not compromising, because I think that's kind of the antagonist of being unique, is compromise just to fit in, whether that's the public life, the private, public, personal, those two can get groomed down, but the secret life is almost unscathed, because that's what we harbor closest to us. I think there's also a lot of interesting things we've all shared our developmental cheat sheet, but Marsha's foreclosure, it's a really great opportunity during adolescence to try on different hats and see what things fit and resonate with you and what doesn't. Because otherwise, I think we're just walking around as a bunch of copies, and to be honest, that world is not really a world I want to live in, where we're all copies of one another and we're all just agreeing all the time. And always famous quotes like, if you have two opinions in the room, you don't need one of them. Like, two opinions that are the same. I think it does become a human need to relate to others. That's like one of the three pillars of happiness. There's autonomy, like freedom, mastery, and relating. And those are all like the three components in positive psychology. My roundabout answer, conforming, and during our later adolescence into adulthood grooming period, social grooming, I think that it's...
Yeah. I think it's fascinating to think about that concept of putting on the different hats. Like, look at us, and I'm not comparing us to anybody else, but just look at us at this point now in our life doing something completely different or new for us that might open up all these different avenues for you to transition into. And I think about the kids who, like, I know who either went off to a school, like a university in a different state, and I think about Ryan Praskovich right now, just thinking about how quickly or differently he could have developed by moving away from home. And that whole concept of like leaving this area and experiencing those new things, or experiencing being out into a different culture, can really potentially like throw some nitrous into your awakening, or into your development, or into fully living in the individual. So that would lead to the question is it about being different from others, or is it about something more? And I think that really hit home on the stuff that you were talking about there, Titty.
I think there's something we talked about in a previous conversation, trying to find out what is the purpose to why we're here. What are we doing? Sure, I learn, develop, what's it all for? Or like this illuminating light, like if we're this 90-watt light bulb, the idea is to try to make that light bulb stronger, better, take away any things that are impeding, like causing shade, and prune ourselves down. But also, we don't have all these different functions. Like science/philosophy is a social butterfly.
Yeah,
but I think that's fair to
he's
say.
not lying.
Each one of us developing those individual traits. If we're not developing those, we get better at it, so it's more efficient.
Oh, without a doubt. And even in something like this of building building out a podcast or building out a business, you got 5 people that you just got together to literally make something. 5 of you all have the same ideas. Well, then where's the out of the box thinking coming from?
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's definitely something more to the uniqueness.
Yeah.
To me, that would be living your purpose and finding what actually is that purpose to you.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I get the idea of the question, like just the premise of what we're talking about, but it does kind of feel like you're talking about like a 15-year-old kid with like a bull emo cut, and he wears like nail polish and the same black clothing every day. Like when you say, "Oh, you're being a rebel, dude," like that's kind of what it feels like. But like there is something to be said there too. Like yes, I think the uniqueness is about like the soul searching and figuring out exactly who you are, and that's what's in end going to make you unique. But like the rebel side of it feels like it's sometimes a suppression or maybe not even an understanding of who you are. Like I don't think like there is something more to being unique. It's not about wanting to be different, but maybe if you're suppressing what actually makes you unique, it does become about wanting to be different. You just don't know what the hell it is that makes you different. You're not comfortable enough that it's accepted by the people around you, and you just, I don't know, there's something there for sure. And I'm not picking on kids who go through like, you know, that type of stage because we've been there. But I think when we go, oh, are you just being a rebel? Like, I don't think there's a bad connotation with being a rebel. I think rebels are some of the most unique people out there. Like that's what, like, they're challenging norms. They're pushing against society. Most people who are seen as rebellious don't tend to give a shit about what people think of us. That's actually the most true to being unique as possible. But, you know, when you give it the bad connotation, you know, there's something to be said about being like not immature, but like it's still someone who's maybe out there trying to figure out who their actual individual self is.
And that led me on to, how do you tell the difference between someone who's unique versus someone who's trying to be a rebel? And to me, living in your uniqueness and working towards that and just being unfazed by anything else, the unique person to me is humble. The rebel to me is potentially starving for acceptance, starving for connection potentially, or starving for attention.
So you're not saying like, okay, so not every rebellious person of all time is not lumped into this group. You're just saying as for part of this conversation, like the negative connotation of a rebel would be that person who's like, you're just doing it just like you're lashing out for attention, or like you're like the kid who was in class who just would just give shit to the teacher for no reason. And that doesn't make that person unique. That just makes that kid an asshole.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was that person.
And kid uses a bunch of big words that you're just like, you could have said a really simple word, dude.
Right. You're trying to stand out because maybe you don't. Maybe you know, even, and I think I just said it, like you aren't sure of what makes you unique, but maybe it's just that you know what makes you unique and you don't think it's accepted by the people that you want to accept you.
Yeah. So you do something rebellious like that almost as in a defense mechanism.
Yeah. But like, does that happen in your adult life? Like, do you work with someone who's like, I'm a fucking rebel, dude. Like, everyone knows me. I'm the rebel guy.
I don't think
Does that happen?
Me personally, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's all I'm getting at. Is like, I think it's a maturity thing too. I think most people get into the fact that they want to, you know, find who they truly individually are. And I think most people you talk to with age, you get more comfortable in your own skin. And like, that's a lot of it. But I'm still starving to find a example that kind of like parallels with like that, you know, Derek when he was 16 who would just make fun of the Spanish teacher just because he thought it would make people laugh because he was worried that people didn't like him for who he actually was. So he had to do shit like that to get people's attention.
I will say, though, I have seen a rebel in union contracting who is 30 plus years old.
Yeah.
And why I say that is because the individual that I'm thinking of right now had a very, very traumatic event that happened to that person. And they were later in life to where this person lost their father, who they were probably was like the stability piece in their life. Right. Of who they were able to talk to because everybody else in their family. Yeah. And they also oust this person and kind of push them out of the scenario. And there's actually a second person that I'm thinking of right now who I don't see as a rebel in the negative connotation. I see him as the positive rebel in the sense of like, okay, my family is all stuck on this one hard truth that they all think is the truth, but is clearly not a truth that I'm going to live by. Basically, like, essentially lost everybody in his life because of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary part of like those people who like maybe don't want to live their true selves because of what they could be giving up by doing so.
Loneliness.
Yeah, there is definitely like, I mean, think of that, like the secret life you have, or your personal life, or the public life. Like there is like imagine someone struggling with their sexuality. Like there is like, that's so hard, and nowadays it's opening up, but like there's people that we know in our lives who've gone through that process, and like just imagining like what actions you would take to make yourself feel comfortable in a situation, knowing who you truly are, but you feel like you can't bring that to the public eye. Like that's gonna push you to do some shit just because you're not in a great state of mind.
Right.
But also on top of that, like you want to see these these relationships build, and you're so against who you are, you just don't feel comfortable. Maybe not against, but you're not comfortable with who you are. So it's just going to drive you into situations that just keep building and stacking on top of each other, and it feels like a losing battle after a while. And it's all just based off the situation that you might not feel comfortable with who you are, and even if you do, then you're worried about like, okay, are the people I care about most going to feel the same way if I let them in on who I actually am? When I was 18, that was like the worst decision I've ever made in my entire life. My brain was, I went through so much shit in my childhood that at the first brink of light I ever got, I shouldn't have said, man, it'd be great, $100,000 in debt right now. I just got through all this bullshit, $100,000 in debt, let's do it. And I did it. And honestly, I could do the job I have right now without that degree.
Bingo.
That being said, there are 100% people who are on this earth who are misplaced in who they identify as, all the way to a gender side. I believe that for sure. Now, are there some people who come from that background who maybe pushed into a decision or feel like that's something that like they identify with this or that, and maybe they're not making the best decision for themselves early on in their lives because they haven't been formed all the way there? Possibly as well. So I don't think it's fair to just assume that every situation is black or white. I think that's not the answer at all. But I think there is something to be said that there are like people who go through a lot of shit and they haven't gone through like these formative maturity years, can be pushing decisions that are not the decision they would ultimately want to make.
No, I appreciate you popping that in because it is true. It's 100%. Being different is always a good thing, as long as you're working towards aligning to your highest self.
But then you got the guy who's like, oh, dude, like Pat Mahomes is my favorite quarterback, and you're just like, you live in Pittsburgh. Like, why do you like Pat? Well, because he's cool, man. Like the Chiefs come in, they win the Steelers. Dude, freaking Pat Mahomes, man, got you. The guy does not. He just likes. There are people like that. That's just not a great example. I don't know why I'm on the football kick today, but like,
should use mine. It's a Starbucks improv.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, you.
All right, no shame to anyone who likes improv. You're good at it. That's fucking awesome. But I think we all can picture someone wearing like a black beret, but coming in with a caramel macchiato, schooling you something you're next. Who the hell are you?
Yeah.
Like, I think we've all experienced some people like that coming in and they're just acting different to be different, which in retrospect for what we're talking about is actually extremely honorable. Is along the lines of industry versus that stand that their approval is genuine. Not just as long as that approval is genuine, you get to move forward with a sense of moving forward, feeling strong. Has it figured out, but I'm still figuring it out. It's like, no one has it figured out. We're all just kind of taking the terrain, hoping that it all goes stage. That's really, we go through this period where we're just trying on different hats, see what works, see what sticks. We don't ever get through that moratorium with a solid sense of identity. We're going to end up, I try myself to don't go through a solid sense of self. Then a cool mom, she's like trying to be like her daughter.
Yeah.
It's like everyone looks at her and they're like, oh, cringe. Awful, but it's entertaining to watch. But I think we all go, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bold to even sit there and, man, that's where the awareness to me, and that's where the discernment really is what brings you home to the way you should be living life for yourself, not for others, but for yourself. And that right there would lead me into discussing how social media can really influence the individualism or influence that desire. And I'm more so talking about the person who starts the YouTube page. And there's a perfect example of it. And there's actually a documentary, I believe, that's on Netflix. This young kid, I think his name was Anthony, and I'll probably mess that up, but Anthony he wanted to grow his YouTube channel. And by growing his YouTube channel, it transitioned into him doing these ridiculous eating, like, I'm gonna go to Taco Bell and order every single thing on the menu, and I'm gonna finish it. I can't leave the Taco Bell until I finish every single thing on the menu.
Hell yeah.
And I honestly believe that was one of his videos. And
can we watch that video?
Can we sample that video?
Yeah. Hold on a second. I like this guy.
His popularity of his channel and the desire for those people who were commenting on his videos saying, like, we want to see you do this, we want to see you do that, do this, do that, and like basically, like, is it dopamine, is it serotonin, that, like, whatever dopamine rush that he was getting from those people coming to his channel, and that attention grab and all that kind of stuff led this guy who was, like, I believe he was like 18 when he started this channel and was like 170 pounds or some stuff, like a very skinny, in shape kid from high school, to become this very large, obese gentleman who had all these health problems. And because of that desire, of that, just the continuous want to rush of, like, having the views, having the people see him, the attention. And I think that's where, were you actually trying to be unique, or was it just that negativeness of wanting to feel like you're unique, where the attention starving was coming into play?
Right. And he found a pocket in which, like, he was like, oh, this will get me the attention. And then he got so lost in the sauce. The fire sauce.
Lost in the fire sauce.
So I think there is something to be said there for sure. Then you kind of, like, if you take away the YouTube videos, those people don't care about that guy. And honestly, he probably doesn't care about the eating. He just does it for the attention. So there's, like, a monetary exchange of what's happening. He gets the attention and the validation he wants, and the people get to watch him eat every bean burrito there's possibly ever been made at Taco Bell. Which is interesting because I feel like formatively, like 17, 18, great. Like I just saw Blink-182, and that is the most immature band in the entire world, for sure, people would say. But one thing that holds true is those guys are 50 years old now. They are 100% the same people they were when they're 18. So it's actually interesting to see that, like, you could say, oh, that's just an immature band that writes songs about, like, you know, farting and stuff. And yeah, that's true. But I promise that those guys are still exactly true to themselves as much as they were 30 years ago. So it's interesting to see that, like, some people get to go through that process earlier, and that self-discovery of whatever it may be. But then you have the other side of like, you do it out of validation, then all of a sudden, like, you're identifying with something that you actually aren't even, you know, true to at all.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes it harder to get out of it. It's kind of backwards pedaling, and then you kind of got to go back the other way. It makes it rough.
I think also the social media, and we were probably going to lead to that, is me being a consumer of social media, not being someone who's creating the social media.
Yeah.
How easily can that affect my uniqueness?
Right.
Because now I see, oh, well, I like to do this, but that person's already doing that niche, and they have all these people who are following them. So if I want to do something like this, like creative, well, then I'm not going to go do that. And it's just like, whoa, pump the brakes, brother. Like, there can be more than one person who's doing that shit.
Yeah.
Because your creativity coming to the table of whatever it is that we're excited about, you can let it shine. That's the whole building up your own wattage to your light and trying to make it as bright as possible is what I was trying to say. Because if that is your truth, if that is your journey, if that is what you are here to experience in your enlightenment, in your spiritual awakening, in your growing of your light, then you fucking live your damn truth.
Right.
There's a lot of people who are trying to continually separate us into the people who don't accept people for this side and the people who don't accept people for that side.
Right.
It's just the constant dividing of it is what just grinds my fucking bones, dude.
No, I mean,
We're literally a type 1 planet because we can't fucking come together and like work as a unit.
Right.
We're just constantly being separated and divided apart. It's like we all live on this one planet together. I don't agree that you like kumquats because I like melons. Like, but I'm not gonna sit here and say that you liking kumquats versus me liking melons is something that we should argue about or debate. Like,
yes.
Funny, as we have less important survival battles, that we come up with more ridiculous battles. I think Joe Rogan said something along that if you don't take on some kind of hardship like he gives the example of working out, take on something difficult. You don't take on something difficult by your choosing. Something difficult will fill its place.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you imagine if one of us, like our past lives, we were a part of the Gestapo or...
I was thinking that, like, if we were part of one of the evil doings...
You know, I sit here and I think that one of my past lives was potentially being like a knight of the round table or like a blacksmith for the knight of the round table. And I've talked about this before because of a Lego set that my dad bought me for my birthday. But was reading up on like the Knights of the Round Table and all this kind of stuff and how they were basically kind of like King Arthur's, like, I don't want to say it, but like fuck boys, you know, who just did all of his like dirty deeds and like kept the order afoot, you know what I mean? So there's the other way to look at the Knights of the Round Table, but there's also another side that is being, you know, portrayed in history as well from books or readings or scriptures and whatnot. There's a very strong possibility that like some of us may have lived our past life as a really, really strong piece of work is the way to phrase it. You know, like a character and a half and just, did some stuff that may have led us into this life being someone who's like wants to do something like this to allow people. And like, I think that's where the whole uniqueness versus being the rebel versus having the positive relationship or negative relationship with your uniqueness versus having a positive or negative relationship with your rebelness all has to be built into this final version of that third you that we were talking about. What do you take all these different programming that you either consume or create for yourself, all these different thoughts, ideas, perceptions, what do you finally put together as your final Lego set? You know, I took some pieces from over here, I took some pieces from over there, took some pieces from over here. Now this is what I'm going to build with all these different blocks that I now have. Right. That's what this whole podcast is about us allowing ourselves to release traumas, because I feel, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel that so many of us are living with these strong weights on our back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's interesting to think about too. Like the situations people find themselves in really do offer you the opportunity for self-discovery. Like, it's kind of hard to judge people on who they are because, you know, there's a different path for everybody and there's a different battle for everybody, obviously. And I think the issue of self-discovery can definitely be suppressed just based off the fact of the situation you find yourself in. Like
from 18 to 30, I think that is a massive soul searching, because now you're finally not, yes, you still have mom and dad, potentially, depending on your situation, to support you in your growth. But at 18, man, by this society's standards, 18, brother, if you don't have what we had, and that you can call whatever the three of us had, whatever level of support you want to call it, but if you don't even have that tiny little basis, or even someone to be able to call and just ask like their opinion on what they think, what you think they should do, or like calling your mom or calling your dad and saying like, hey, this is the situation that I'm in, like what would you do? There are a lot of kids who just don't have that, man. So I'm 100% with it. That 18 to 30, those are massive building years and soul searching years. Having that situation of having kids at a young age, I didn't live it, but I was birthed into that type of situation. My mom was 19 and my dad was 21 when they had me. You know, my dad, his whole goals or aspirations when he was in college, he went to school for marine biology. His game plan was he was heading straight out to California to be a beach volleyball player and to be a marine biologist. At 21, he has me. To put it as blunt as possible, that whole situation went out the damn door. Now, could he have been just like his father before him and ran away? But that's where my dad, and that's why I don't give him a hard time with him being set in his ways or set in stone or not wanting to do different things nowadays or living in fear. Because like that son of a gun made a commitment to my mom and a commitment to me, and then ultimately a commitment to my sister 3 years later. But damn, man, his life could be a whole hell of a lot different.
Yeah.
Do you imagine being 20, being really good at volleyball, moving out to California? You get a marine biology job out there, so obviously that's going to pay pretty well. You're in your 20s, you're very well in shape, and you're in Southern California. What a different life compared to being stuck in Pittsburgh, PA, Steel Town, old school unions. What happened to him in those formative years? I don't know, because I was 9 when he turned 30.
Yeah, it's like an RPG game or something where you have or like Madden or any of those games where you get like you're like, do I want to be good at this, and when the more you go, I want to be able to throw the ball far. You're not as fast, or if you want to be fast, so there's the experience of you go through these things, and maybe that does help you find out who you truly are. Or maybe the adversity you face does actually help build a character you would have never been. Maybe he does make it out to California and he falls on his face because he's not tough skinned or whatever it may be. He didn't seek any adversity in his life or whatever it may be. So like there's that basis of, yes, he didn't get to go. My dad kind of went through the same thing. My dad, a terrific painter, dude, and drawer. My dad's great artist, and like 31 came and he had me, and that was not the end of it. He still went after that kind of thing, but it didn't really, priorities changed, right? But I think the adversity people face or different experiences do help out. So maybe you don't have that support system we just talked about, but in turn, that actually can help as a driving, motivating factor, or put you in situations where, like, you're right, if it's diffusion, you don't want to go this way, but you're not going that way either because you're afraid of failure, but you don't know what you want or whatever it may be. So you just say, I don't care. On the other side of it, there's the thought process of, well, if I didn't face any adversity and I don't know what I want, maybe I'm sticking there. So those weird situations you find yourself in where maybe you didn't plan for them, yes, that's against the grain that you were hoping for, but maybe if you continue to follow that path you were looking for, you would have gotten there anyway because of the situations you did or did not find yourself in.
Oh, without a doubt. That whole concept of, to me, it's falling in love with the journey versus falling in love with the destinations. That's a classic line. Not getting to those destinations that you initially thought you were going to do. And what you're saying is those opened up doors or avenues or built mental capacity or physical capacity or strengths in you, or opened up you to conquer different weaknesses that were in your life, literally plays fantastically into your journey in this life.
Life. I just thought of cars a second ago. Life is a highway, bro. But like it is
talking like Fillmore.
Life is the highway. But
the Herbie.
If you get off an exit on a highway, the only destination is you're dead. That's your destination. You're gonna die. Like there's the next. I know it's like stoic way to look at it, but your destination is death. If you're on a highway and you take an exit, you don't get off the exit and then the road stops. Like that doesn't end what you're doing. You're just going into a different path, and the roads never seemingly end, but eventually the end of the highway is. So like, I think the ability of like different alternate routes and discovering different things or maybe things you didn't plan for. Yes, the only destination is you're going to die. But I think you're right. The journey, like no matter what the goal you set or these different accomplishments or things you experience are, I don't really see them still as destinations though. Like, I think that's things that build you up on the journey you are in, and the journey is it. Like there's nothing outside of the journey. The journey is your life. There really isn't a destination other than when it stops.
Oh my goodness, dude. That literally makes me think of when you're driving down the highway. Like for instance, we were coming home from South Carolina recently. Saw on the GPS that we had an hour backup ahead of us. Whoa, how did we miss that? Hit one of the emergency turnarounds as soon as we got stuck into that situation. Found a new alternative route to then come up right back onto the road that we were on.
Right.
If the road went like this, we went like this and met right back up to it. Was it a windy road that was slow and through the hills and whatnot. Yes, but it ultimately brought us back to that destination. So that, to me, is the concept of allowing yourselves to just flow with the ebb of your actual life. Not trying to have the wheel and grip it so damn tight that it's like the guy who's sitting in that car who's just getting pissed off because now he sees all this traffic ahead of him and doesn't learn how to use different technologies or different, tools is a better way to phrase it, to be able to continue moving on their life with a flow to it. It's nope. I know that I got to go 77 to 79 to 19 to back to 79 to then 70 to 79, and that's the way that I go. And that's the way I get back to Pittsburgh. I get off at Bridgeville that way. There ain't no other way to do it. I ain't going through these damn hills. I ain't doing none of this bullshit, all right? And then that's the whole getting off of an exit and having trust that this is where I'm supposed to go, that this feels right now. Sitting in this stagnant traffic does not feel right to me. And or using that traffic in different contexts of thinking of, well, I've been trying to build this media company for how many years, and it just ain't working. But this is the only way. I'm doing it this way. There's no other way to do it. And someone comes along and they're like, "Hey, brother, do you ever think about using like this or that to potentially do it?"
No!
There's no way. Are you kidding me? That's a stupid way to look at it. And you're like, well, I guess you're not open to other possibilities. At any point in time in your life, you can literally decide every single second, every single snap. You have that opportunity to make that choice. Use your discernment, sit in your awareness and say, man, I've been beating my head against a wall right now. Nah, it's time to try something new. Or it's time to, I need to sit back for a minute. I need to reconcile my thoughts. Stop continuously beating myself up and trying to work towards what I feel like is my truth and allow my truth to honestly show itself by being flexible, by having acceptance and understanding of people who have different ideas, people who have different thoughts, people who might want to do things that don't seem natural to you. That's where the building of you coming into your own uniqueness finally flourishes, in my thoughts. And to me, the misconceptions that would be placed onto someone who is either individual or unique or would be that they don't fit in with a society thinking or with a community. For instance, the concept that you said of 6 guys get into a group and one of those guys, has some truths to them or feel that they have some truths to them that they have to suppress to be able to stay in that situation. Being fake. Honestly, I guess it can't be considered a misconception about someone if they're falling into it, but I think a misconception on someone is that they're doing it out of a desire of attention, but that's to me that's the negative version of the rebel.
Yeah, the misconception is it's not that they're doing it for attention, it's that they're suppressing who they are and trying to identify as something so that it comes off as a try hard. Like you're like,
yes,
those people stand out pretty easily. Like I've been there, so I know, but it sticks out like a sore thumb, man. If you're someone you're not, no matter what you try to do, when you're trying to identify the group who truly does identify with whatever that group may be, and you're there, and that's who they truly are, and that's not who you truly are, you're going to stick out very, very quickly. So I think in that thought process, it's not so much that you're, outwardly trying to be fake, but you are. It's that you're just suppressing yourself from who you actually are and then trying to just mirror whatever is around. And that's going to just, there's no uniqueness to that. It sticks out so quickly in that type of situation. Yeah, you take yourself out of that pocket that, like we talked about with a quarterback. If a quarterback's and all you're thinking about is, I'm going to get murdered, you're never going to find yourself in a process where you can throw a ball downfield or find the open receiver or whatever. There's a consistency with who you need to be in that situation. And I think that's the same thing there is the more you start to overthink anything in your life, the less you're going to get results. And, there's a trust in whatever situation you're in to make sure that you put your best foot forward. And sometimes that's a lot for people to handle. And am I going to be able to live up the expectations this time? And that will take a lot of people out of a lot of different situations that they could otherwise flourish in.
Why are you beating yourselves up so much? And I think that's where the gripping the wheel too tight and trying to take your destiny into your own hands rather than allow that destiny to just appear is what holds people into this like negative, like, just beat the shit out of themselves, like vibe that you're just sitting there and you're like, feel so fucking bad for you.
Yeah.
Why are you beating yourselves up so much? Dude, I know I do it to myself too. I do it to myself when I ride my bike solo. I'm sitting there and I'm like, look down at the speedometer, look down at the average. I'm going to get this faster. I'm going to get this faster. I'm going to get this faster. Instead of like being out and just being in nature, which is something that I continuously try to reconnect with, I'm so focused on this damn number. And you're like, if you just didn't think about the damn number and you weren't looking down at that, you would have saw all this beauty that was around you. Like, what? You know, like, but that awareness is difficult to build.
Yeah, no, it's still play goalie in soccer. It's the same thing. If I see the best player on the team coming down at me, and all I'm thinking is, I have to save the ball. I have to save the ball. I am not saving the ball. There is no saving that ball. But if you trust the instincts in the situation you find yourself in, then all of a sudden your reflexes and what you've, out of all that experience in said situation comes to fruition, and then you react accordingly. But the second you start overthinking that, it becomes a lot harder to act accordingly.
Provoking idea. Right now, there's different research that suggests, I believe, we're going to be judged anyway. Whenever we finally zap the marker of the fourth order is moving. No, I don't care. I'm gonna be myself if I get fired tomorrow, worse tomorrow. Yeah. Social judgment. Like, where do you guys see it?
Right. I think there's a negative connotation with adolescence. Like, it's something you need to get out of. Like, people want to get out of, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think most people want to strive for the things the energy and the want and the drive and the creative ability that all comes with your youth, and that mostly the energy of like oh, I'm like positive and I haven't been beaten down, the nail hasn't been beaten down yet, and I think that's when it ends, and that's when most people, and you can always refine that energy too, but I think it's a balance, and it's a conglomerate of yes, I still have this energy and I still have this like youthful exuberance, but I find myself in a situation that kind of suppresses that. But if I can make sure that I don't put too much weight on this side of the scale, then I can still, live on this side. So, if it's kids or job or wife or whatever, those things will start to take away from what you can, at least time. It doesn't need to take away from the energy or the want or the drive, but it does take away from the time to, spend with yourself and what you do as an individual. So not to say that your family or things who are all very important things, but they also do become identifying factors in the wrong situation. I love my girlfriend. My girlfriend and I have this relationship that I've never had before because we are allowing ourselves to be individuals. We don't see each other as being tied into each other. We live our lives. We respect each other as individuals. If she's having an off day and she's like, I'd love to just read a book and hang out, we had plans, we're not doing it, that's amazing. Please read as much as you want, because we have trust in ourselves, and there's an understanding there. So it's a mix of, I don't think you want to lose the adolescence, like you said, like it's going further than ever, because I think people are finding themselves in situations where they want to stretch that out as long as possible. The adolescence is not age or time. I think it's situationally based. And, people used to get married in their late teens, early 20s and have kids and find a job and a house. And that was your identifying factors. And now we're starting to become that generation for the first time. That's the last thing I want. And honestly, that's kind of situationally based too, because it's impossible for anyone to buy a house right now. Like, I know people with $60,000 in the bank right now and they can't buy a house, like a starter home. That's insanity. But it's actually kind of driving us to spend more time with other factors that, okay, a house would be nice. I would love to live in a house. But that's something that isn't offered to me right now. Okay, cool. So if I don't have the house and inflation's going up, and everyone's stuck with student debt and we can only do so much, you're kind of forced to still live in a present moment. And I think that does push the adolescent energy out further than ever has before, just because you give yourself more time to figure out who you are. You spend more time with yourself. You spend more time on like a very foundationally based level of what do I like doing? What do I want to do as an individual? I'm not going to tie myself down in relationship, but if I do, hopefully it's the right one with the person who understands me and allows me to be me. And if I have kids, can I balance that time with things I still like to do? Can I see my 40-hour week job as, something that helps me curate what I want to do on the side? I don't see it as like a weight, but actually an opportunity to let me do things on the side. Those are all things where it's a perspective thing too. So I think we're all becoming more in tune with that, and maybe we just have more ability to do so than maybe 50 years ago. I think that the negative connotation that comes with, oh, you're immature. Like, there is a maturity thing that you can still also have like a youthful exuberance about yourself too, and want to be a focus on yourself.
For me, it's the epiphany moment, and I use Icarus's line of every human lives two lives. Their second begins when they realize that they only have one. I am someone who believes in reincarnation. However, I still haven't been able to tap into my past selves. So I'm 30 years old, and yeah, I have this knowledge that I could potentially tap into that. But for me, it was the epiphany moment of, I only know this life. I'm only going to know this life. And that's, to me, what I was thinking at that point in time when I had this epiphany moment. But that epiphany moment stemmed from an actual trauma of getting fired from a job where I was doing nothing wrong. It was just pure ego that took me out of that job. I don't think that someone has to have that epiphany moment, because I think that some people have that understanding of mortality their entire life, or they live with that potential fear of like, I'm going to die one. But for me, it was, I know I'm going to die one day, but shit, if I'm 70, 80 years old and I'm sitting in a bed and I don't have all these like interesting things to like sit there and think about, like, am I going to be the person at 80 years old that has all these regrets of not going after this or not going after that? So to me, I don't think the adolescence phase, like Terry's saying, ever needs to be looked at as a negative thing. I think it needs to be a driver.
Yeah.
And I want to be 50 years old and still be the goofy dude who can laugh at, a little kid making a farting noise. Like,
because what's the alternative? You're just gonna roll over and die. like
70, you're not gonna reroute.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's just. Yeah, but there is something to be said about still staying on that highway, of you want to mature and you want to go through the self-discovery phases of your life and be able to be comfortable with pivoting into different things and understanding like there's different risks, and if you want to take something on, like, you should still, I think we could all agree that the youthful, the most beneficial thing that someone of youth can bring to the table is the ability to want to learn. And you knock that out of yourself pretty freaking quick. Like me, I kind of don't like learning things. I kind of see it as like it's just a pain in my ass to set this thing. I'm going to start from the very beginning on something right now. That's, oh God, that is horrifying for a 30-year-old person to think about. But the youth, like, I'll take that. Oh, I want to learn how to play this or that or whatever it is. And having that, youthful exuberance to yourself of always wanting to learn, always engaging in things, and right, like you said, not taking yourself too seriously or whatever it may be. Those are things that are going to, because what is the alternative? You stay on that same path and you're freaking screaming at people in traffic, and you just you keep suppressing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and then you freaking have a stroke and die. Like the thought should be that what's the stoicism like? It's like memento mori, or so remember you will die, remember you are mortal, or whatever it is. That's not morbid. That's just, you're right. You have one life. That's all you know. Continuing to fight against that, the only outcome, like we discussed, that's the only outcome for you. We're all here. the only thing we all share, the only thing that doesn't make you individual with everyone else in this entire planet is we all have the same outcome. And that's not to be morbid. That's to be a reminder of making sure when you wake up every day or when you go to your job and you go, man, God, I just can't wait for today to be over. And then you say it the next day. You say it the next day. And then all of a sudden you're freaking 56 years old. You can't just go into every day and go, can't wait for work to be over.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing that, you know? Like, what are you getting, a root canal? Like, I can't wait for the root canal to be over. You shouldn't say that about what you do for a living. And I think that's a fight that a lot of people will just keel over to.
I think it's so sad because that person who can consistently get up and go to that job every day with how much it's making them feel like shit just literally hasn't turned the self-respect dial from self-respect for my position or my identity as this job to self-respect for myself.
Yeah, and that person probably has more strength than they even realize to keep going through a situation that they fucking hate.
Well, it's crazy too. On the same lines, probably wasn't, but I might have been one of the first people to say really advanced for someone in their sleep as psychologists. And we make all these compromises. You know, most people, probably 99 job, don't leave a job. I have a lot of respect for that. In the situation, it's a private situation, and he's condemned. Send your brain into audit differently.
Yeah.
Is it me? And then that's where we go in this rabbit hole of, oh, it's the circumstance. People to stay true to their guns. I think is tying, keeps coming back to, we can choose to be that nail that stands out, driven down, or say.
Yeah, no, that's the mix, man. The balance and the inner strength, and I think that is important too. Like, you're not weak because you find yourself in those situations. A lot of people have this inner strength when they find them in the situations that they're getting beaten down. They're strong as anyone, but it's just the, like you said, the self-respect thing of like, you gotta turn that knob the other way eventually to get yourself back into going into a direction where maybe you don't change your entire life, but you have an understanding of, you know, you aren't a piece in the puzzle, man. You're not like, you know, saw some weird video of like the galaxy and how the galaxy is built and how like in the galaxy, Earth is literally like the size of like a proton or something. But like to us, like that size is relevant down to like like we are just like, to that, we are a galaxy. Like, it's so big. So if you take that same proton and you compare it to us, we are as big as the fucking galaxy, but us to the galaxy is the size of a fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like
an ant.
Yeah, you're nothing. But to the proton, you're fucking everything. You're the whole fucking universe. You're all you can see.
Right.
So there's that understanding of, it's not going to change your life, but to give yourself that empowerment of, you know, you're as big as you make yourself, and you're as small as you make yourself in situations too. And that makes or breaks a lot of the journey of life. And I'm 30 and I know everything I'm talking about. So, you know, believe me.
Yeah, right. Well, that leads me to finalize this episode with you boys in what is one or two bullet points to help the person along on their journey? What are two things, one thing even, that you think is like a little bit of a cheat code?
Like, I always find myself appealed. The honest truth is, I've been programmed. If I would have wrote probably like, since Derek and I were in 8th grade, enough self-respect, I probably would have had like probably 100 different pieces of writing. Like, but I always work harder for someone else.
Isn't it fucked up how that's seen as like the right way though? Like, take my brother.
School, great.
My
school.
brother is a pain in my ass in the best way possible. I love him and I care about him so much that there's a lot to be said. But that kid is the biggest, I don't fucking care what any single fucking person thinks than I've ever met. So like, when he didn't want to go to school, because that's just not what he wanted to do. He was a more creative driven. He knew what he wanted. That was seen negatively because he didn't want to be the worker bee who showed up. Now, I went to Safe Light and I worked my ass off every fucking day, and it was like, good job, Derek. And you know what that got me? Literally nothing. Got Safe Light windshields delivered in a very time efficient manner. It got me a paycheck that didn't eventually go away. But that developed me in no way whatsoever. And it's fucked up to know that like, you're like, if you're programmed to be the worker bee, and like that's seen as a positive, that's great. But like someone like my brother who just like, why would I spend more time working my ass off for you, so then I can't just go back and focus on what I actually know that I want? Like, that kid knew what he wanted for as long as I've known him. You turn and look at me. I have been put in a situation where I've been working for, you know, so many years, like 18. I'm still rolling through it. And you're right. I don't think I have that ability. I'm still trying to learn like the self-respect portion of, hey, yes, you can still work your ass off and show initiative through that 40-hour week job, but we can all agree that 9.5 times out of 10 is not where most people want to be. But on the other side, you can still find that route of, I can do enough of this job. I can focus on it, but I should have the respect on and want to do more for myself than I do for that place. Because in turn, as far as development goes, unless you are in that job and you're that one half of you're doing what you love, then you're just taking away from yourself.
Yeah, I also see it though as like because I worked there with you and we worked with your brother. You now are at this age and you have this ability now to make this transition in your life, to work towards your personal stuff.
Right.
And you have that background and knowledge and discipline of every day I was able to show up for these people and bust ass and bring quality to them. So now, why can't I just transition that to when I get home to bust ass for myself?
Right.
Versus the person who doesn't even show up for those other people now has to try to figure out how to show up for themselves after hours.
Yeah, it's a sliding scale. Like you're going, so you fall somewhere in there. It's one way or the other.
It's having the positive and negative relationship with those situations. So being the person who goes to work every day, bust ass, and then comes home and looks at that as, I gave all this time and I gave all this energy and I gave all this to these people,
Yeah, there's a resentment, but in turn, that's the situation you put yourself in. I think that's the biggest lesson, whether or not it's this conversation or not. Most people do not hold themselves accountable to the situations they find themselves in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of spots in which, yes, you are a victim of circumstance, but a lot of people do not put the damage on their own plate because they like all these outside factors and they don't care about your job, my job, your job, I can think all agree are transactional. They care about you to a certain extent. They know who you are. People at my job, I've been there long enough now that like I know 99% of people I work with. And I can't say that I dislike or don't get along with any of them. I don't. I actually work at a good place. As far as I worked at shitty places, so I can identify when I'm in a good one.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, it's still transactional. Like I know I can name one thing for all, like the guys I work in my room with, one thing that they do outside of work. For the most part, like, that I think they would, and I think they could say the same about me. We're just a tight-knit group in there. But you're right. Like there's still something transactional about that job. And then there's a resentment when, you put all this energy and then all of a sudden after 15 years, you're just fired because, organizational changes. Like, what did I put all this effort into? Like, no, you got lost in the sea of this is my identifying factor. This is who I am. And that is not who you are.
Right.
Again, if you're like, you built something up or you always had a dream of being in, a weatherman or whatever, and like now you are, and that's what you wanted from, and you saw it through, and that's it. That's a different factor. But most people nowadays are in a spot where they are working in a job that, yes, they like, and yes, it kind of works to some of their strengths, but if given the opportunity and money wasn't a factor, it's not what they would do. And realistically, I think that that's just something that a lot of people have to be more in tune with. And if you go back to answering your question, and we do got to wrap it up here.
Yeah, we're wrapping it up.
It is listening to that third you. Like I think I'm becoming more in tune with the sense of like, hey, when you're doing something that you don't see fit for yourself, I think I've gotten to the point that I'm at least getting more comfortable knowing in my head as I'm doing that, hey man, you probably should be doing this instead, or you should not be doing this, or you did something and immediately that wasn't the way it should be. And I think it's listening to that third you, that voice in your head, that subconscious that's going to lead you, because that's who you truly are.
Mine would be building the strongest blood cell you can. And what I mean by that is a blood cell is something that is strong and potent in itself, protection. However, it is basically water-like structure.
Trisha's called me too, Nabal, by the way, so I think we need to wrap up. But anyway.
It's like a water-like structure that is a membrane that allows things to come in.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is build this extremely tough exterior, this strong skin, to where all the bullshit does not affect you easily, but allowing yourself to always be that person who can accept and give love.
Yeah.
And that would be, if you can accept and you can give love to any person, and you can allow yourself to not be affected by any of the outside sources or the distractions or the negativity, then you're going to be able to get to that place of being able to build that third you.
Yeah.
So that
Amen.
was episode 5 of the Dismount podcast, where we were discussing being different and the uniqueness and whether you're a rebel, the negative, positive to all of those things. So thanks for riding with us. We'll see you next time. As always, don't trust us, trust yourself, and we'll see you next round.
Yeah.